A majority of the most well-known horror stories are known best for their primary antagonists. Some of these characters are so well-defined and beloved no matter how the character is adapted, we still know the base characteristics of these villains, their strengths and weaknesses, sometimes what they represent, but the iconography of their stories are defined by a person. This makes sense as humans' real-life conflicts and relationships are defined, of course, by other people. Even at times you'll see fears themselves personified as something tangible and living in stories. But let's talk about stories documented in analog media, books, movies, and TV. So I'd like to pose a question. Why are internet horror stories less afraid to be about places? I wouldn't be surprised if you at some point had run into a real-life location that has made you uncomfortable. A house you might think is haunted, a building that is closed, or more than often now what we often refer to as a liminal space. Liminal spaces as a word almost feels buzzwordy in the landscape of modern horror, but essentially it describes an area that feels surreal or discomforting. A hospital wing after hours could be a liminal space, the same way a dead mall can feel like a liminal space. Places are defined by what people do in them, and if there's no one around to do anything, your mind starts to wander. The first example people often give of liminal space horror is the Backrooms, a creepypasta first found on 4chan describing no-clipping into a near-endless labyrinth of yellow-walled, office building-like hallways that stretch forever. The Backrooms feels like a clear image in our minds. If you've been into most modern office buildings, you can imagine one that's huge, almost endless, and without purpose. But the final sentence of the Backrooms creepypasta is really what got storytellers thinking. God save you if you hear something wandering around, because it sure as hell hears you. The vagueness of the language of the Backrooms creepypasta is really what sells it. It's only 2 sentences, but both of them bring hundreds of questions, many that have been interpreted by creators across the internet. If you no-clip out of the Backrooms, where do you go? What are the implications of a reality if you can no-clip out of bounds in it? And most pressing of all, what are the other beings in the Backrooms? Are they people? Are they monsters? And why should I be afraid if they hear me? Because of this ambiguity, there's no central menacing force of the Backrooms that everyone agrees upon. The place of the Backrooms is the horror, and what you fill the Backrooms with is how you define your story. The Backrooms creepypasta came out in 2019, and since then has been the face of a subgenre of horror defined by its frightening places, and what could possibly lurk within them. But what if I told you it's been done before, about 10 years before the Backrooms ever released? SCP-087 is probably one of the first names that pops in your head when you think about SCPs. Or at least it definitely was for the first few years of its release, whereas the other major SCPs that you may think of, like SCP-173, SCP-049, or SCP-682, are often to some degree living organic beings that can hurt you. SCP-087 is a place. Most people who clicked on this video are probably aware of SCP to some degree, but for those who don't know or need a refresher, SCP refers to a fictional international organization dedicated to securing anomalies, containing anomalies, and protecting humanity from anomalies. It's a setting and parameter for stories housed in a wiki worked on collectively by thousands of writers and readers. A numbered SCP is an anomaly either contained or recognized as uncontainable or impossible to contain. This can be an object, a living being, a piece of media, sometimes something more conceptual, but in the case of today's examination, a place. SCP, the word, can refer to the SCP Foundation, the collective SCP Wiki, and numbered SCPs, whereas they're often referred to in universe, objects. So I'll try to differentiate when talking about SCPs. SCP-087 is a staircase from an unknown school campus that descends downward an unknowable distance. 4 explorations by the SCP Foundation have been documented inside of it, the 4th of which resulted in no more explorations being allowed into SCP-087, and all information about the 4th exploration has been expunged from its documentation. The staircase isn't completely unoccupied. Deep within it is an entity known as SCP-087-1, a being that appears merely as a face deep within the darkness of the staircase. SCP-087-1 seemingly isn't alone as well. In explorations of the staircase, there's sounds of a distressed child that become audible 200 meters down the stairwell. In theory, these sounds could be coming from SCP-087-1, as all we know about it is that it appears as a face with no pupils, nostrils, or mouth, but this hasn't been proven by any explorations. In the canon of SCP, potential SCPs are examined by scientists with the aid of Class D personnel, who are usually criminals or ex-SCP Foundation members charged with discovering what kind of threat an SCP can pose. In Exploration 1 documented in Document 87-1, the Class D charged with exploring SCP-087 reported hearing the voice before the audio was picked up in the recording. In all 3 of the expeditions we can see, no matter how low the Class D went, the child's cries can still be heard. A mix of help, please, and down here. In the third exploration, shown in document 87-3, we can confirm after descending more than 469 flights of stairs and encountering SCP-087-1, the child's cries initially felt closer, but in every exploration, no one ever felt like they were face to face with the source of the cries. The Class D in Exploration 3 even said, "It's like for every step I take, she takes another one down." The most fascinating part to me about SCP-087 is that it's an incredibly different experience during each descent. These documents in Universe are recorded video logs where SCP Foundation member scientists guide Class D personnel through the staircase, giving them instructions via radio. But metatextually, they are represented in the SCP Wiki as written transcripts of the videos. In the first exploration, the Class D personnel charged with investigating SCP-087 made it down 51 flights of stairs before encountering SCP-087-1, which lunged at him, forcing him to run back up the stairs. The Class D ran back so fast he actually passed out when getting to the top floor. Notably, the camera recorded the child's cries approximately 200 meters down the stairwell, which was a little before he ran into SCP-087-1, and the cries did not end until he reached the first step of the top floor. In the second exploration, the Class D made it down 51 flights of stairs, but he wasn't greeted by the face, instead seeing a huge gouge in the concrete wall. After attempting to descend further, he noticed the first step in the next flight had been reduced to rubble. SCP-087-1 actually didn't show up until the 89th flight of stairs, where it stared at the Class D until the Class D screamed when SCP-087-1 blinked. The face lunged at him, forcing him to run back up the stairs. The Class D collapsed on the 17th floor for 14.5 minutes, after which a non-human heartbeat can be heard, followed by a cracking sound. The Class D immediately got back up after the sound and unceremoniously finished his descent, remaining wordless and unresponsive upon his retrieval. In the third exploration, the Class D didn't notice anything different at the 51st floor mark, but on the 89th floor, the furthest point of the last investigation, she found a hole in the stairs that goes down at least a kilometer. She had managed to go down 469 flights of stairs, a huge leap from the first two explorations. There, she decided to climb back up against the wishes of the Foundation, where she saw SCP-087-1 blocking her ascent. This time, the face wasn't fixed on the Class D, but the camera filming it, which caused visual glitches and a static-like screech being recorded throughout the remainder of the exploration. The Class D ran downward until she reached floor 609, where she tripped and collapsed. SCP-087-1 caught back up and stared directly at the camera feed until the video feed was cut. The fate of the Class D in the third exploration is left ambiguous, and as the fourth exploration is expunged, we have no idea what was found, supposedly past the 609th flight of stairs. This is a huge reason why I think that SCP-087 is a generally solid internet horror story. It leaves a lot to the imagination. Who built these stairs? What is SCP-087-1? What is making the sound of a human child's cries? How did the Class D in Exploration 2 get back up? Why are there visual differences at the furthest point of descent of the last exploration? We'll never know the answers, so it works perfectly as a story for our mind to wander in. The fourth exploration being expunged means there's no closure to the story of SCP-087. And I think that's for the better, despite the author saying she's penned one. SCPs are best when they're vague in nature. Like most horror stories, the more you know about what's antagonizing you, the less scared we as an audience will be. Answers to the questions will always solve the hard part about facing the unknown, and luckily the answers are never given to us about the staircase, just like the answers were never provided about the backrooms. So is the author some sort of mega genius wiki contributor who really tapped into a deep vein with SCP? Not really. SCP-087 was published by user Zaeyde on the SCP Wiki on December 10th, 2009 as one of the first SCPs ever created. Interestingly enough, despite writing what has gone on to become one of the most iconic SCPs ever made, its creator only contributed to the wiki from about October 2009 to February 2010, a period of about 4 months, and then only contributed a few more times since then. In that time, she made some edits on SCP-607, made SCP-087, and also penned her final SCP, SCP-099 The Portrait. I think SCP-099 reveals an uncomfortable truth about the bad writing tendencies of Zaeyde. Despite the mysterious nature of SCP-087, 99 is something real and quantifiable, represented by The Portrait by Belgian painter René Marguet. If you're not familiar with René Marguet or the Surrealist movement, you might know him as the guy who made the Treachery of Images. His painting The Portrait is a real-life image. You can visit it in the Museum of Modern Art in New York to this day. and you could back when it was written in 2009. The image is an oil painting depicting a realistic table with a bottle of wine, a glass, silverware, and a ham on a plate with an eye at its center. SCPs are works of fiction in a very open universe where a seemingly conspicuous object can do almost anything. So what can SCP-099 do? It makes you incredibly paranoid, and that paranoia can spread like a virus to other people near you.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The IRL copy of the painter was in the hands of artist Kay Sage until she donated the painting to the Museum of Modern Art in 1956. But in the world of SCP, the original painting was replaced by SCP Agent MTF Theta 6 Pink Panther? And it's being held in SCP Gallery 27. Rene Marget apparently intentionally caused this paranoia-inducing effect, but didn't know how to recreate it, and never did it again for any of his paintings. However, an important piece of information I left out about SCP-099 was that this was not Zaeyde's original vision for this story at all. It was not her intention for SCP-099 to even be the portrait by Rene Marget. That was the work of SCP Wiki contributor Sorts, who in a lot of ways seems to have rescued SCP-099, which was literally downvoted so hard it was several hundreds in the negatives and risked deletion. Sorts kept in a good amount of ideas from Zaeyde's original version of 99, but the revisions did save a pretty underwhelming piece. SCP-099 in its original iteration was the fucking Mona Lisa,
Da Vinci?
created by Leonardo da Vinci, and the wiki entry was even called SCP-099, the Mona Lisa. The SCP Foundation in this version of 99 did still replace the very scary paranoia-inducing Mona Lisa, but it was stolen in 1911 from the Louvre and replaced in 1913. If that sounds familiar, it's because it actually did happen IRL. In 1911, Italian-born Vincenzo Peruggia stole the Mona Lisa from the Louvre after working there for 3 years. His motivation provided to the authorities was wanting to return the Mona Lisa to Italy after he believed it was taken by Napoleon when he learned Napoleon had plundered paintings and other artwork during the Napoleonic Wars. It's unsure if that was his true motive or not, as the painting was actually given to King Francis I of France as a gift from Da Vinci back in the 16th century. The point is, it's interesting that Zaeyde decided to reference a real-world event that did happen and not even reference the guy who did it. He died in 1925. I don't think he's gonna get mad if you say he was
in the SCP Foundation.
Let alone Agent MTF Doom or whatever.
That Doom is one sick son of a gun!
Take the peanut butter and jelly, put it in a burger, now you got burger and jelly.
To be frank, the first draft of SCP-099 is a rambling mess. And like many first drafts of early SCPs, you could tell the writer was still finding their footing on what an SCP should actually look like. Zaeyde herself even responded to criticism by saying, quote, "It's nowhere near as good as SCP-87, and while she has talked about 87 several times since 2009, I've never seen her reference the Mona Lisa since it released, especially since it took the form of the portrait in July of 2010. Not all numbered SCPs are made with horror in mind. Some of them are just fascinating or funny, but the staircase works for a lot of the reasons that the Mona Lisa and even the portrait don't. The staircase leaves a lot to ambiguity. It feels unknowable and unquantifiable. SCP-87 is literally a being that knows it's being observed. In Exploration 3, it literally messes with its observers on purpose. SCP-099, on the other hand, is based on a real-life case and explains that our Mona Lisa is a fake. There's not much ambiguity to it, other than how Leonardo da Vinci and later Rene Marget were able to create a cursed painting. SCP-099 feels derivative in a lot of the ways that SCP-87 felt original. During its first 2 years, SCP-87 was probably the second most popular SCP, only edged out by SCP-173. Nowadays, I think SCPs like 49 and 96 are definitely significantly more impactful due to games such as Containment Breach and Secret Laboratory. But speaking of video games, I think SCP-87's real impact as a work is its many forays into the realm of video games. The rise of SCP as a wiki and storytelling setting paralleled right around the indie game boom of the late 2000s and early 2010s, and it intersected for the first of many times in 2012. Haversine's Unity-based game titled simply SCP-87 was about as simple as these games would get. You would descend the staircase until SCP-87-1 sees you, lunges at you, and then crashes your game. Haversine's SCP-87 is mostly notable for being the first SCP video game, but also inspiring a game based on the staircase that would also release in January of 2012. Regardless's much more impactful SCP-87-B. Just as 87B was being born, gaming press was rumbling about the remake of a controversial source mod, Dear Esther, and soon a new term within gaming was penned, the walking sim. Although at the time this felt derisive, this is a primary mode of interaction throughout both Dear Esther and SCP-87B. You walk. In Dear Esther, you walk around an island. In SCP-87B, you descend downstairs. Despite the low levels of interaction in 87B, this game became incredibly important to the indie game horror landscape, inspiring many budget horror walking sim titles. Although 87B is a horror game, in my opinion, games as a medium need to further distinguish genre and mode. Let me break down what that means to me. Genre refers to a classification based on style and setting. Horror is a genre that can be subsectioned into smaller subgenres based on its story and tone. Mode is the way that you play or the way that the player interacts with the world. For example, in the same series, Silent Hill is known best for being a survival horror game with elements of third-person shooters. But the series also includes Kojima Productions' PT, which may be one of the most well-known walking sims in the horror genre. While survival horror games are often third or first-person shooters just in a horror setting with some degree of resource management, how that differentiates from other shooters really is genre. What I'm trying to say is SCP-87 defined a mode that was iterated on a few years later by PT, that being walking simulators in the horror genre. Classifications in gaming can get so minute based on genre, subgenre, and mode, much more so than any other medium. Stay with me here. Five Nights at Freddy's, Resident Evil, and Outlast are all what we refer to as survival horror games. Games that you need to survive enemies with limited resources, but how you do this in every game is entirely different. Outlast is actually kind of a walking simulator with no ways to fight back against your enemies. Resident Evil games are third or first person shooters that sometimes feel more like action games. And Five Nights at Freddy's is so different, it almost inspired its own mode within survival horror. Seriously, if you think this is being hyperbolic, look at every FNAF fan game ever. And if you're wondering why I have to go on this tangent on genre and mode, it's because horror walking sim in 2012 felt counterintuitive at the time. While in most games you run from danger, in this game you walk into danger. There's only two verbs, descend and die. Sometimes even two nouns, left and right, which is a confusing departure from the original story. So SCP-87, the story is incredibly simple but effective. You go down a set of infinite stairs, and there's no deviation from this. But in the interest of making a more interesting gameplay experience, over the years, SCP-87 added different hallways and maze-like structures, most infamously, the fork. The fork and the entity associated with the fork represent to me a fundamental design disagreement between the story on the SCP Wiki and the game. If you pick wrong at the fork, you die. There's a pit you can fall into or be pushed into by the red mist monster, one of the three entities featured in SCP-87B. So in the original story, the only known creature was SCP-87-1, which in this interpretation was split into three entities: the Masked Man, the red mist monster, and the Glimpse. The Glimpse is pretty much the closest to SCP-87-1, it's literally a face. But unlike SCP-87-1, it does not call for help. It just stares, and when you touch it, it vanishes, whispering, no. The aforementioned red mist monster is a guaranteed encounter for everyone. You'll see him if you pick the wrong path in the fork, or if you reach floor 40. He'll ask you not to look at him, where you'll ironically have to stare at him or be killed. I really don't like the red mist monster. I think he looks goofy and he feels like the furthest deviation from the story. Masked Man, the last entity, is also very different from the feel of SCP-87-1. He's just a man with a masked smiling face that is a common chaser type enemy for a horror game. If the light goes out halfway through a hallway, you'll need to keep running through it. But if the light goes out at the beginning of the hallway, it will keep flashing until he gets close enough to kill you. And it's intentionally easy to die. The only way to quote unquote win the game is to get somewhere around past floor 130, in which the masked man kills you and the game crashes. There are 4 possible messages that will occur after the game crashes, most important of all being, it's not about whether you die, it's about when you die. Yeah, in a different game, I could say that this maybe relates to this game's philosophy. Memento Mori, remember you'll die. It's a hopeless affair, you climb down some stairs and you die just like the original story, but it is different in some key ways that matter. The SCP Foundation monitoring you will tell you early on that they can't radio you after 6 floors, which is just not true in Zaeyde's story. There are multiple malevolent beings that want to see you die, when in the original there's supposedly only one. SCP-87B doesn't make you feel isolated or hopeless. It wants you to be scared, and that's it. It's about dread and tension and jump scaring you to Kevin MacLeod music. I can't possibly bring myself to hate Regales' SCP-087 though. It's a darling interpretation of a story I like, coded in all the early 2010s horror vibes you need. You could replace Masked Man with Smile Dog or Jeff the Killer and get the same experience. And I think the accessibility of the concept is the thing that Regales got the most correct. Hell, he even said that SCP-087B was literally made in a week after seeing Haversine's Unity game. It literally used to end with getting jump scared by Finnish rapper Kalle Havumaki of the Finnish rap group Resispossee. Resispossee and its frontman Kalle were apparently a meme in the Finnish message boards at the time. And since the game was mostly meant to be shared around Finnish message boards, the game literally just ends by you getting killed by a JPEG of Kalle with a generic horror stinger music playing. I'm not Finnish and I don't speak Finnish, but I don't know how to feel exactly about the whole Resispossee joke, especially since Resispossee's whole things was the fact that they had different mental conditions and were very open about it. It feels really ableist to me, and I'm not trying to cancel Regales in 2025 or anything, but its very of-the-time humor dates this so well. Ironically, recently in the search for Jeff the Killer's original unedited picture, Kalle Havumaki came up again, as his very distinct mouth seems to make up the mouth of Jeff the Killer. This is just speculation, but by using the base of Mariko, the other prime candidate for the Jeff the Killer image, photoshopping out all her expressions and putting on eyes in Kalle's mouth, you may just find the composition of Jeff the Killer. Jeff the Killer's original image came from what, 2008? It'd be interesting to use a bullying target from the Japanese message boards and a bullying target from the Finnish message boards. What I'm saying is if anywhere, you should look for the original Jeff the Killer picture on Finnish message boards of the time. And I want to reiterate, I'm not Finnish, and I don't even know if the trend of photoshopping Kalle's mouth onto other people existed when Resispossee first came out in 2008. For all we know, the face and body isn't even Mariko. Maybe it's someone who photoshopped Kalle's mouth onto their own body, but I think either way it's interesting to have this strange connection between one of the most famous SCPs and Jeff the Killer. This game was meant for a very small audience and exploded in popularity, so Kalle's influence might be gone from SCP-087, but never forgotten. But actually it isn't. Is it a tangent to go off about a Finnish rapper and his relationship to SCP-087? Not at all actually, because I'm pretty sure the mouth of Kalle, the same one that might be Jeff the Killer's, might be Glimpse's in SCP-087B. This could be wrong, but Glimpse, the red mist monster, and the masked man all seem to have the same smile, and the game used to end with a jump scare from Kalle. Hey, and if you want to give points to theft, the 2022 game Inside the Backroom seems to use Glimpse as its representation for the Smiler enemies. If Kalle's mouth is Glimpse, Kalle has a chance of being associated with Jeff the Killer, SCP-087, and the Backrooms. I don't think Kalle's meme background influenced the overall success of 87B, as Kalle literally doesn't even have his own Wikipedia page in English, just a note as Responses, and that page was recommended to be deleted by staff in 2012 for lack of relevance. Dude, it's rough out here for Kalle. But the real reason SCP-087B was big was the intersection of the rise of Let's Plays on YouTube and the bubbling popularity of SCP. Just as titans like Markiplier and PewDiePie were on the top, SCP-087B released, and it's the perfect game length for a Let's Play. Because SCP-087B's end is death, it really doesn't matter when you stop, and it's a game you can basically get everything out of within 30 minutes to an hour, so it was the perfect game for a Let's Play. Back in the pre-streaming days, you generally wanted a really segmented game you could break up into chunks like Amnesia, or something like 87B that you could beat in a very short playthrough. Regales moved on quickly from the success of SCP-087B and went on to make probably the most well-known SCP game, SCP Containment Breach, but the hype for SCP-B didn't die down there. Other than Regales and Haversine's interpretation of SCP-087, we also have the SCP-087B Extended Edition mod, SCP-087GG by DK_Productions, SCP-087 Premium Edition by disgusting shovelware company CGI Lab, and the Unreal Engine SCP-087B remake by Chris Korth, the maligned and simply titled SCP-087 Eerie ADV, and the recent PS1 style and simply titled SCP-087 by GHST. One of the most fascinating games to me is SCP-087 Recover Document by Filatov Igor Lagunov Roman, Christian Shotov, and former ice hockey pro Kurvikin Nikita. I know that's not actually the real hockey player, but it's a weird coincidence that makes looking at this game nearly impossible. But Recovered Document is one of the few SCP-087 games that clearly states that it's supposed to be SCP-087's Lost Fourth Document. The game was fucking awful, but at least they tried to make new lore. On the topic of 87's Fourth Document, in 2016, Zaeyde said she actually found Document 4 on her computer and asked on Reddit if she should release it. Many people quickly asked her to release the document, but she never actually did, and I really hope it stays that way. While researching the topic of this video, I saw a lot of people who responded to SCP-087 and its fan games saying, SCP-087 isn't scary. SCP-087B is just you walking around a staircase until you die. And then I saw a lot of opposite responses. SCP-087 is the scariest SCP. The games are so scary it's hard to move. And I think my opinions lie somewhere in the middle. I like Zaeyde's original SCP-087 story. I like the ambiguity. I think Document 4 being so gruesome it was expunged to be interesting. If the first 3 expeditions went as bad as they did, what happened to the 4th one that made it so bad the Foundation can't show it? If SCP-087-1 became aware that it was being filmed, what else can it do? And why does it live within SCP-087? But I comparatively don't think that SCP-087-B has aged nearly as well, despite all its remakes. It solidified the horror walking sim genre enough that future generations could be built upon it. It walked, so backroom games could also walk. And I think I'll end on that note. This video was devised as the first in a series on old internet horror and how well it's aged, and what the finished product looks like years later. Funny enough to me, SCP-087 really had a lifetime of about 2010 when the story first came out, and then died in popularity just after its height in 2012. Regalis breathed new life into SCP-087 just for it to lose interest to the now infinitely more popular SCP Containment Breach released the same year. But there will be always room in my heart for the staircase and its funny stare face. Hi, my name is milk_OHK. Thank you for watching this video, and if you made it this far, a like and a sub would help me immensely. I haven't been using this channel very much the last 2 years. I'm going to build out some more videos. But what do you think of SCP-087 and its lasting impression on the genre? Do you want to see any more videos like this? I have a lot of ideas that I want to iterate on, but whenever I reach 100 subscribers, I want to do a big retrospective on Binge Round. If you want to see more of my content, you can check out the Carbon Monoxide Girls channel linked below. We post gaming channels and discussion on online culture. But thank you for all your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.